Welcome to the limited series podcast called Insight to Impact. On each episode, I sit down with leaders in the energy industry to talk about their career journey, learn about how they rose to the top of their game, and share their expertise and insights with you. I'll be having real, candid conversations with the people behind the executive job title to learn about what motivated them through their career, talk about the mentors that impacted them, and what comes next in their journey. You can find Insight to Impact wherever you get your favorite podcasts across multiple platforms. Stay tuned. Hey guys, welcome to another edition of Insight to Impact. In this week's episode, I sit down with Ed Reynolds, Vice President of Commissioning, Completions, and Startup at Kent Global. Ed has an amazing story to tell from traveling all over the world, honing his skills and learning how to become a key leader at a global engineering firm. Ed's journey began as an apprentice in Ireland to now overseeing massive commissioning works on some of the world's most critical energy projects. Ed shares his story about how he's grown not only as a technical expert, but also how he's defining what type of leader he wants to be and the impact he can have on the industry. Let's get into it. Ed, welcome.
Thank you, Rob.
Thanks for being on.
Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Did you say that you've had a very linear career? I guess going back from the days of schooling and education, did you always set down sort of a technical path?
So I've definitely been interested in hands-on elements. I suppose growing up, I would have always been the one to help my dad if there was any jobs to be done, in the house. He would have had an electrical background or leaning, so if there was any jobs that needed to be done, I'd be his apprentice, and I think that kind of fostered a connection with some element of technical work. I think, when I started to do summer jobs, I worked as an electrician's apprentice when I was 16 for a while. I worked at construction sites, did carpentry. So it was more leaning towards the trades. And then finishing school, my parents had kind of put me in a direction leaning towards engineering. So I was difficult to get focused in the last few years of school to really apply myself. It wasn't really a priority, but I did enough just to get the marks to get into mechanical engineering in CIT, which is MTU now. It's Munster Technological University. They just changed in the last few years, but that got me into a course. But still, the application wasn't there. I struggled to actually focus, and I think by the end of the year I had, we'll say, enjoyed myself too much and gotten into the college experience. So I still understood the importance, in my mind, of continuing my education. So I sourced out a course in Cork College of Commerce the next year, and basically did business studies, which is a bit of a transition to what I was intending to do. But I had always found business and accounting something that I could not relate to, but it wasn't too much of a challenge compared to the actual technical courses where I'm now a lot more familiar with in my later years. So I did that for a year and then transitioned into second year, and I started looking at my career options, and I was looking at accounting, which I never thought I would end up contemplating.
Yeah.
And where that was going to take me. With Cork College of Commerce, you do a lot of, we'll say, certificate diploma work, and then you would transition over to a technical college or a university to continue and do a degree. So I was looking at, I think, another year or two of business and accounting. So I went back to my parents and I told them that I wanted to start a trade. So this was within the first month, I'd say, of the second year of the business course. And they were supportive. They felt like this is something that I would be passionate about. So I put together my CV, which was only one page at the time, and started going around to electrical contractors in the city. And I think the first contractor I went to, Kieran Electrical, they were just up the road from where I lived. They called me back for an interview, sat me down, and said, "We've read your resume," and they were interested on the business side of things. So they'd obviously seen that I'd done mechanical engineering for a year in business, and they were like, "We have this apprenticeship opening up for electrical instrumentation." I never heard of instrumentation in my life, so I was curious, and that's that started. I became an apprentice back in 2006, and that was mostly in pharmaceuticals. So I spent most of my time down there doing my apprenticeship working in Pfizer down in Ringaskiddy, which would be, I suppose, for Cork in Ireland. There's a massive pharmaceutical and industrial space. So you've all of the major global pharmaceutical manufacturers in a hub in Cork. So definitely got an opportunity to build on a trade that had a lot of experience in, kind of larger scale projects, but also really technical.
Yeah, yeah.
So
I imagine that'd be quite a big change, right? Going from sort of working in the trades, working with your dad, just doing small odds and ends projects, to your first job, an apprenticeship working at a company like Pfizer.
yeah, so it was Kieran's was the contractor that I ended up working with, but yeah, the clients was definitely. I suppose it allowed me to understand the importance of safety and process, because you're entering into facilities where they're clean rooms, and you really have to be meticulous about how you're conducting your work. You couldn't leave a shaving of a piece of metal on the ground in one of these clean rooms, because it could potentially contaminate the product. And these batches were, maybe up to $1 million. And if they found, any particles inside there, they'd have to scrap the whole batch. So
Wow.
you really had to be careful about how you were doing your work. Which I don't know if that was. I would consider myself to have an attention to detail, and I don't know if this was where it was fostered or it's something that I've always had. But yeah, you really have to be meticulous. Um, so I was there with the company for six years, and then in the middle of that, I decided I wanted to continue my education. So I went back to school at night and went back to MTU, which was the CIT, where I first did mechanical engineering. So I did 3 years, 3 days a week, 3 hours a night of night school to do applied physics and instrumentation, or industrial measurement and control at the time, with an idea of doing 3 years at night and then eventually going back and finishing a degree full time for applied physics and instrumentation to become an engineer, a
Yeah,
practicing engineer. So I think that was tough. Definitely, you're working long days in the trades, and then you have to go into school three days a week.
yeah,
After 3 years, you're out of school at around 10:30 p.m. every night, and then you're back in the back on site the next day. So that was my first. I think that was the first time I really applied myself when it came to study and actually wanting to do a good job and really put in the work. I think up to then I'd been coasting, just getting what I needed to get done. But this was the first time it was my own decision, really, that I felt I owned. Apart from the encouragement of your parents to try and push you in a direction.
yeah,
So this was something that I felt I was more accountable, because I was the one that was putting myself forward. And saying that I wanted to do this. So after, I don't know if you know much about the trades certification in Ireland, but it's a 4 year practical and theoretical training. So you do maybe a year on site with your employer, and then they send you to a training facility for 6 months, usually somewhere up the country. And then you'll come back again, do another year, and then you'll go to a college for 6 months again and do all your theory, and then back again into work, and then a final 3 months. So the minute I finished my trade, that's when I did the 3 years at night. And then the minute I was finished the 3 years at night, I was hoping I could find employment outside of Ireland that would allow me to save up for a year and provide me with the funds to come back to Ireland and finish school for 2 years full time and support myself. So I had heard about a company, Kent's, who were working globally, and they were doing a lot of major oil and gas projects. And I had someone that I knew that was working in Canada at the time. So I reached out and I said, "Is there any chance for work for an instrumentation technician. So he had given me the details of somebody over there, and this was, I think, 2012. So I no idea of what the conditions were like in Canada. I like a lot of people I've talked to since then. Just an understanding that it's snowing 12 months of the year, and it's just a snow apocalypse there, and really harsh conditions, which is, like, I suppose, true enough for 6 months or 5 months of the year. But they get lovely summers. But yeah, I had this idea that I'd be working in a place where I'd be sleeping in a tent, and having to go out to a wooden shack to use the washrooms. Obviously, not like that at all.
Right.
More modern facilities are really good. I don't know if you've ever been on a major projects camp facility, but yeah, there's pool tables and games rooms and cinemas, and
Yeah.
yeah, it's done really well in Canada. So that was a bit less daunting. So I got over there. I started as an instrument technician, just doing some commissioning work, which I was familiar with from working in pharmaceuticals, but just a very different format. This is where I took a bit of a sabbatical from higher education. I thought I was a bit, after the 3 years, at night I wanted to take a bit of a rest and kind of figure out what to do. And I'll do the year here and see if I want to go back and do the full-time study. And first experience with rotational work. So I was enjoying the flexibility of working and having, significant time off. So I eventually decided, when the year came around, another project came up, that I would move to the next project and not go back to Ireland to finish my studies. I think within that time I had gotten a promotion up to I think it was INC supervisor. I had come off of a project with a manager called Tommy Duffy, and he basically said that he'd give me the opportunity to step up a new role. So he kept his word, and the next project I moved over to, I was in a more senior role. And then we were on a campaign, Western Canada Major Projects, for I think 4 or 5 years with Kent's. The same group of commissioning personnel, moving from project to project to project. And by the end of that program, I was a INC specialist, which is, I suppose, close to what you would consider to be a project SME for a certain discipline, for instrument and controls. So I was enjoying the opportunities to be able to advance in a career and be able to see, if you work hard and you show interest and you put in the effort and you advocate for yourself, that the company that I was working for, Kent's, would give you those opportunities to move up. And I really appreciated that. So finished the campaign of projects. I had been working a lot of hours for a considerable amount of time on that campaign. So I had since moved to Vancouver in January 2015. And the projects finished June 2015, and I decided I'd take the summer off and enjoy Vancouver with some friends. So took a few months off of work. And then I think I had come to terms with the fact that I wasn't going to go back to Ireland and finish my degree. I had gotten a taste of living abroad. And I think it was something that interested me. There was opportunities outside of the US and Canada with the company. So I was just going to take the time to enjoy my summer, and then have a think about what I wanted to do next, knowing that there was options out there, which was, I suppose, the important thing.
Yeah, I was going to mention, it sounded like, even though you maybe didn't have like a prescriptive plan going back to before you left Ireland, that going abroad and finding opportunities to work abroad maybe always had some appeal, and then once you saw it, you were just kind of hooked from there.
Actually, no. I
No?
never wanted to work abroad. I was gonna go finish my engineering degree, get what I needed to get done, working in Canada, get home, and probably settle down in Ireland, be an engineer with maybe a pharmaceutical company. That's the exposure I had up to then. And then just leaving Ireland kind of opened my eyes to the opportunities of bigger projects, movement in positions, and just travel. So yeah, I definitely didn't have aspirations of
Right.
traveling the world and leaving.
Do you think that's a very sort of present or accessible? Is there a lot of opportunity, especially in the area of Ireland that you grew up, where many people had even the chance to pursue something to go abroad, or is it more typical that even in the trades, you go through your schooling certification and you just kind of stay and work where you're at?
I think historically Irish people love to at least leave for a few years.
Mm.
I, you know, probably back, when was it? I think 2018, even before that, when the country wasn't doing so fantastically. We had massive promise that when we came out of school and when we came out of university, would have been around 2008, that we would, we'd all be guaranteed employment in Ireland. But things turned the corner
Hmm.
on a global scale economically. So a lot of people travelled. A large number of my friends left and went to Canada or Australia. But now half of them are, I would say more than half of them are now back in Ireland and settled. But Ireland being a smaller country, there's not endless possibilities of where you want to
Yeah.
take your career. And I will say, having worked in the industry now, overseas as an expat since 2012, so we're talking 12 years, there is a significant amount of Irish people working on these jobs, and working with these major global contractors.
I'm curious to know, why do you think that is?
Um, just you're not going to work on projects the same size in Ireland. They rarely come up. Whereas there's projects on a global level that you can get into that are really big projects, something to be proud of when you're done with it. And I think they just don't have. Well, there's no real major oil and gas industry in Ireland anyway. It's mostly off the North Sea, so you see a lot of people going to the North Sea, up in Norway as well. But yeah, I think it's the ability to be able to work on larger projects with a larger contractor, and then also, there's significant opportunity for earning, to increase your earning capacity, just because they are major oil and gas projects. So you can really capitalize on supporting that. So I think that's the appeal as well. But
Mhm.
Irish people traditionally have always been known to want to travel.
Right, right. Do you think, appreciating the cultural aspect of it, of regardless of your trade, Irish people tend to want to travel and at least see something outside of their neck of the woods? Do you think in the last maybe decade or so, from a technical standpoint, on these big projects or working for different contractors, is it more of a concerted, like maybe public information awareness to say you're not only guaranteed work here in Ireland if you're going through higher education or certification, but there's also, do they really do a good job at sort of promoting these opportunities, or is it just kind of get through it and then see what's out there sort of on your own?
So mine was purely through a personal connection.
Hmm.
I don't think if I had that connection, it would have been made aware to me. Like, you're not going to get promotion within the industry, because it's basically removing people from the pool of resources. So it's going to be these global contractors coming in. What I did notice was there was drives for more metropolitan areas, like especially in Canada and the and Australia, where they were trying to actively seek expats to come over from Ireland and have them working on
Okay.
more commercial projects than domestic, and just trying to get trades. But from an oil and gas and major projects perspective, I don't think I ever remember them, being any massive recruitment drives associated with that industry. Um,
Right, right.
there is a network there. There's a massive amount of, I suppose, word of mouth, and then you just build it out. So yeah, maybe that's changed since I was there last,
Hmm.
because I do know, it's definitely a pretty contentious topic of where these resources are going to come from in the future. So you would like to think that, companies are going to the colleges, going to the universities, and going to the trade schools, um, and doing these employment fairs where they're trying to recruit. Because I definitely think back when I decided to leave Ireland, that there wasn't a massive amount of awareness on the opportunities.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely noticed when I was growing up in school, it was a public university in Oklahoma, but had several ties with different oil and gas companies. So obviously there were ties to the big operators and natural gas companies like Chesapeake or Devon Energy. And then on the field services side, there were tons of recruitment efforts done by Halliburton just to try and get that presence at the university level.
Yeah, look, it's definitely something that we're seeing. That we, as a company, we've tried to see what we can do to try and promote and give clear line of sight, because when it boils down to it, it's just lack of awareness.
Yeah.
Just really kind of articulating the opportunities that.
Yeah. It's kind of captured in that old phrase of like, you don't know what you don't know. And you almost, looking back, you're almost wishing you could sort of like reach back into the past and tell yourself at that time, there's all this opportunity. And like for yourself going to Canada and being there, even maybe the first few months or first year that you're there, you're still thinking, yeah, I'm going to get back to Ireland. And then, like you said, taking the summer off to spend time with friends in a big city in Vancouver. So something obviously switched, right? Something was like, yeah, I need more of this.
Yeah, no, it definitely was. I don't know if you've been to Vancouver or not, but it's a great city, and the summers are fantastic.
It's beautiful. It's beautiful.
There's a lot to do. You can head up to the mountains and head to the lakes, or you can, find a restaurant. So it's it was a good time. I'm glad I got it in, and I decided to do some traveling after that as well. I went around the world for a year, which I would highly recommend if you have the means to do it, because you never know when you get the opportunity again. And I know it's something that people probably overthink and have to, which I did, was the fear of leaving something that I've worked so hard to try and grow in a career, and then try and build it up again when you come back.
Yeah.
But if you put the work in and you've built the reputation with people, you'll be recognized for that.
What was your most memorable place that you spent time in when you went around the world?
Probably Japan.
Oh, really? Nice. Yeah.
Probably my favorite place in the world.
How long were you there?
6 weeks, I think. It was 5 or 6 weeks. Landed in Tokyo and worked all the way up to the North Island. Tried to do some snowboarding in Sapporo, but too much powder. Which seems to be a common complaint there. It's just so good. So much of it falls. Learned to snowboard there actually in another place. But yeah, fantastic country, really friendly people. And
did you pick up any of the language while you were there?
I could say, because everybody, the minute you walk into a restaurant, everybody's going to say hello, the entire staff. So you wanted to be able to reciprocate. So hello, thank you, goodbye, and that was it, I think.
Right. I'm trying to imagine the reception of an Irishman walking in, giving Japanese greetings.
So maybe it was because it was Paddy's Day, but we were in I can't remember the city, Kyoto, and Kyoto's a lot of history. I don't know if you've ever seen any photos on Instagram of the red pillars that kind of go off into a walkway that's in Kyoto. And it was Paddy's Day, so decided to see if there was any Irish bars in Kyoto. There was a lot. Went in to probably every single one that we went into. The Guinness was flowing. It was the nicest Guinness I've ever had outside of Ireland, consistently. Wow. And there was local Japanese students playing Irish traditional music. So that was cool.
That's bizarre. That's bizarre.
Yeah, I don't know I never did find out what the connection was and why there's such an Irish influence. But yeah, that was the first year that they actually stopped doing the Paddy's Day parade. I'm not sure what reason, but apparently it's supposed to be a massive event there.
It's funny the connections that people make. Obviously, your path and mine is completely opposite, but I don't know if you've ever heard of the Sister Cities organization. It's basically the citizens' version of the U.S. State Department, where different committees will form around different cities and states throughout the U.S. and they'll approach ambassadors and diplomats and other countries and cities across the world and try and establish a partnership, like a tie, whether
Yeah.
it's cultural or diplomatic or economic exchange. In the small town in Oklahoma that I grew up in, we were sister cities with Kyoto. So after just earlier, I wanted to touch on, you said obviously the value in taking the time off and traveling was fantastic, and coming back feeling like maybe starting from the starting block again, and had to sort of rely on your network. What sort of came next once you had your adventures?
So I moved back to Calgary to kind of baseline, because that's where Kent's main Canada office was. And then just reached out to see if there was any opportunities. I know there wasn't any major projects kicking off, so it was October when I returned, and probably took around a month and a half of looking for work. So it was a bit of a concern to say, like, was I really going to have to start with a new company again? I really wanted to get back with Kent's because I'd enjoyed the opportunities that were afforded to me. So just before Christmas of 2016, an opportunity came up. We were supporting a client doing some validation work. So basically just scrubbing their engineering documents and making sure that they were um, aligned with standards. So pretty mind-numbing work, sitting in front of a screen, going through P&IDs and single line drawings for hours and hours, for weeks and weeks. So I did that, but I was just appreciative to be back with the same company. Working with some colleagues that I'd worked with over the last 5 years with the same company, and then an odd opportunity came up, which kind of, if I hadn't accepted, it would have definitely changed the course of my career. But we had a technical recruiter who had requested to go to a project in Oman, Alan, and they needed someone who understood the technical aspect of positions on a project to be able to support recruitment. And they were stuck in a bind. Lead at the time asked me if I'd be interested, and to be honest, I never ever thought I would end up doing recruiting, but I looked at it as an opportunity to get into because we were actually based in the client's office at that time doing the work, and I looked at it as an opportunity to rub shoulders with some of the senior leadership within the organization, to try and build those relationships with people that I had heard of but would never have met face to face. So, I didn't think that getting to talk to people on a technical level, day in and day out, was going to be massively challenging because we were talking the same language. So I said I'd put my hand up, take the role, and I'd learn as I went along, and then just use the opportunity to network with the rest of the organization in the office. So that assignment was around 6 months, and I made sure that I did talk to the leadership within the office there and just let them know of my interest on getting back on projects and leading a team and developing my skills and getting challenged. So I'd made it very clear, and I communicated and signaled that to a few key individuals within the office there. So when an opportunity did come, that I'd be given a chance to do it. In the meantime, I also then started back in school. This was 2017, and started my automation engineering degree online, out of the Engineering Institute of Technology in Australia. So it's actually the only institute globally, it was then anyway, where you could have a recognized engineering degree 100% online.
Wow.
So set up a really good invigilation kind of platform, and then also the lab work was really interactive. So there was a good mix of theoretical and practical course content. So when I moved into this new recruitment role, I started that course as well. And thankfully, because I'd done my trade and I'd also done my certificate in industrial measurement and control, I skipped the first year and a half. Thankfully, because it would have been 7 years or 6.5 years if I hadn't. It only turned out to be 4 years instead. So that was basically the decision I'd made, where obviously I'm not going to go back to school full time. I appreciated being able to work and study at the same time. I had done it before, so I jumped into that. And then 6 months into the recruitment role, an individual David Toohey, who was with the organization and worked on a lot of the major projects in a senior role on site, had decided to leave Kent's and go to Kent and run a portion of their commissioning business. I think once this is said and done, I'll explain some of the journey of Kentech, and Kent, because
Right.
they're all intertwined, so it'll make sense at the end. But he had left, and he was one of the individuals I had spoken to for if there were opportunities coming up. So I did ask him, if there was anything that would be available in his new role, that he would try and consider me. So in fairness, he reached out a couple of months later and said, did I want to lead up their project in Kazakhstan as a commissioning manager. So I looking back on it now, I definitely thought it was a stretch for me. It was a big step up, but I've never rejected an offer of a position that I've been given, even if I thought I might have to learn. I think that's important to just back yourself.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, there's a lot of people out there, bluffing it. I think definitely give yourself a chance. Don't put yourself down, and just believe in yourself to be able to do it. So I did, and that was a pretty steep learning curve. Just dropped in, and thankfully I had the support of a number of individuals to kind of help me stand up the team. But yeah, I was basically coming in and starting from employee number one, and then building it up from there. And that was a massive experience that turned out to be a huge, program for Kentech for commissioning globally. I think by the end of it, had around 2,000 people at peak on the project. So I definitely learned to hone a lot of skills, and something that I struggled with up to then was public speaking, and I think this gave me a perfect opportunity to be able to build that skill up, because when you're building a team that starts from one person up to 2,000, you can really get an opportunity to just gradually working away the nerves. So that massively helped.
I think that's interesting, especially in such a technical career. I think so many people either forget or maybe just diminish the value of either whether it's public speaking or just building those relationships, those interpersonal skills, those soft skills that can, again, so easily be set aside to say, just put your head down and do the work. But like you said, you had the steep learning curve of the technical aspect of the job. And then your next biggest challenge was there's several thousand people on this project, and I'm in this role that requires either public speaking or managing those relationships across different teams. I think it's interesting to shed light on that. That's just as important in the success of your career, really.
I think something that I've noticed anyway, there's within this industry, there's an assumption that you work hard technically, you start to move up, you get more leadership roles, and then it's assumed that you'll just transition into something like a project manager or commissioning manager and have the skills to be able to fulfill a role that's very different to where you started. Mm-hmm. Thankfully, within the organizations that I've worked with, there's been a lot of available resources. We've used a software called Percipio, a platform, and it basically is a open source, like any material you want in relation to career and self development. It's available to you. Very interactive. A lot of visual learning, and then audio as well. And it just if you want to say, hey, I want to build my strategic thinking skills or problem solving skills or conflict resolution, that material was all available to me. So I made a pretty intentional effort during COVID, because it felt like I spent half the year in a hotel room isolating before I could go off site or come on site. So I really got stuck into a lot of the course content there, and I think that that stood to me, because those softer skills that you might not develop in your technical days was all available to me. So I was very appreciative of that.
You had said that you used the term "we use." Was that something made available through Kent or Kentech at the time, the company?
Correct. Yeah. So it's still a platform now. Yeah. So it's basically, all you need is your email address. You set up your account, and all of the material is available to you. So even from I don't know if you're aware of PMP. So all the course content for that is available, and it will allow you to do all of the learnings that you need to do prior to sitting the exam. So I took full advantage of that, or elements of that as well. But yeah, that's that's something that's available to every single individual within the organization, which is great to have, I think.
Yeah, that's a huge resource to tap into.
Yeah, and they give you digital badges that are linked, and you can actually put them onto your LinkedIn profile and build out your overall profile. So the digital badges actually stick with you. So it's, yeah, at least you get this sense of, you're actually building up these learnings, as opposed to just ticking a box and saying the courses. So yeah, no, definitely very appreciative of having that resource available.
From a timeline standpoint, were you still on assignment in Kazakhstan when you had to kind of quarantine, or was that what was the order that all those things sort of
Yeah,
took
so
place?
Kazakhstan mobilized to Kazakhstan in 2018, and then I think, was it March 2020, things started to go a bit south.
Yeah,
Then we started to, with the whole project. So the project in general was around 10,000 people on either shift, so 10,000 people at any time. So pretty big project, and they needed to basically demobilize everybody except down to like critical, like a skeleton crew, for a period of 3 months of the summer 2020. So that time was spent in isolation, in camp rooms, trying to get everybody, back to their home countries. And then I think there was 3 months of trying to figure out how the project was going to manage bringing people back. So I think probably around September of 2020, we started bringing teams back, and then, just you're in small areas, confined spaces. You're in an office. Everybody's wearing masks, but there was a number of outbreaks across the project anyway that were managed. I would like to think really well, but it did ultimately mean every time you wanted to travel out of sight, come back into sight, you had to go into quarantine. You had to be tested at the start and tested at the end. So yeah, there was a lot of time, and I probably could have spent it watching TV, but I just really wanted to take the time to be productive and get motivated. So yeah, it was a good time to at least do some personal development.
yeah. I'm sure the team that you had at the time probably appreciated that, whether they knew it was something you were doing or not. Just you being able to take those skills and apply them, especially during a really, really difficult time.
I find, like, I definitely feel like I feel like I have a passion for teaching,
Mm,
and any opportunity I got to try to apply some of the learnings, like problem solving skills, and just some of the methodology around that. So we were dealing with a few issues, and I just gone through, I think it was a book. I can't remember what the book was, or a program in Principio, and it was like how to get to the core of identifying your problems, and then how to delineate which ones are priorities and not. And there was just this theory that needed to be applied. So I sat our core leadership team down, and we worked through it. And they were very appreciative of it at the time, and I really liked the interaction, because I was learning from them and they were learning from me. So yeah, definitely any opportunity I got to get on a whiteboard and start drawing graphs, yeah, that's
It's
that's
it's interesting as far as whether it's conflict or like you said, just getting to the root of the problem. Because again, especially everyone with a technical background, that's a totally, it might be, the structure might be a similar exercise of it's just a bunch of decision trees and if then trial and error. But especially when you're managing a team, no matter the scale or the size, if you're trying to either meet deadlines or what you were talking about, trying to navigate unique and really challenging situations, you'll hear a lot of people react to something, or they'll get defensive, or they'll shut down, or they'll do whatever. And it's easy to just kind of default to that authoritarian, like, do this because I said so. But if you've not really taken the time to sort of ask the questions to understand, okay, why are you reacting that way? How are you feeling about this right now? I don't think that happens enough, to be honest.
So I think you're touching on a pretty pertinent point there, because I have, just with, I suppose, the movement of roles and the different responsibilities. You've talked on a point there about listening and understanding, where people are coming from, and I think, in my younger years, because I was coming from a technical background, my default is to try and fix things.
Mm-hmm.
And that doesn't really promote a sense of involvement or open listening, or even just taking the time to sit back and say, why is someone saying what they're saying? You just want to try and fix it. And
Yeah.
that's something that I would like to think I'm working heavily on at the moment. I have over the last 3 months, I've connected with an executive leadership coach. So Scott Clark, with Awesome Journeys, they're based out of Calgary. He's their CTO and one of their executive leadership coaches, and it's the study of ontology. And it basically just goes through the study of being. And a lot of the areas that we're starting to touch on now is like listening and really understanding what people are saying and why they're saying it. Um, as opposed to, going to your default of trying to be the person who wants to come up with a solution and try and fix everything. So I think I'm going through a bit of a journey at the moment of changing my leadership style, and how I've, historically presented myself and supported people, and how, where I want to be in the future.
Yeah.
Uh, and
Yeah.
it's pretty powerful stuff.
No, that I think that's fantastic, because you find a lot of times, and I'm sure you experience this as well, is it's almost like that problem solving exercise is almost like an iceberg. Like what you see at the very top, or what's exposed, is their initial reaction, and as soon as you ask one, maybe two questions, then you start to get a look at the rest and go, oh wow, there's there's a lot going on here. And it I think it adds so much value, and it doesn't really require a whole lot on your part.
Gone to a transition of scope management, and it's really just people leadership, and that's, I don't know, if it's something that appeals to me. I find it significantly more interesting, that you can try and enable people to be the best that they can be, and it's less about the individual,
Mm-hmm.
and myself, and going, what can I try and be the one here that comes up with the answer. I think obviously from a team perspective, it's a lot more sustainable, if the team can work through those issues and provide the solutions themselves. So yeah, it's something that's a very interesting space for me.
Mm-hmm. Would you say that during COVID, would you say that was sort of the turning point when you felt your role shifting away from I need to be an SME to I need to be a better manager or a better teacher or a better coach?
I think so. Like, it was just not. It just wasn't manageable to be able to get into the weeds of the project, just because of the size of the project. Even though that would be my comfort zone. So yeah, I think that was definitely a turning point, and that's when I leaned back into Precipio, because I was like, I didn't have the skills needed to be the person that I needed to be on that project. So yeah, I think just given the dynamic of the size of the project and the amount of people, I had to pivot, and I had to be able to deal more with people leadership as opposed to project management. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
and that's, I find that more interesting. I find it fascinating getting to know people, um, and being able to support them. So yeah, while I do miss elements of the technical side of it, like going out and troubleshooting a problem, I think the space that intrigues me more is just the people aspect.
Yeah. Do you think for you personally, you think the most value that you can add to the industry or sort of give back, whether it's internally at Kent or just in the broader industry, do you think it's positioning yourself more of an SME or more of that sort of mentor and that sort of leader in the space?
Yeah, I think definitely the more and more my career goes, like being in the role I'm in now, it's heavily business orientated. So, from a technical SME perspective, I'm getting further and further away from that. So I would love to be able to contribute to the industry as a whole, particularly just the commissioning, completions, and startup area of being able to either promote bringing young people back into the industry. There's obviously a lot of perceived negative connotations towards the oil and gas industry with young people these days. Energy transition is a big space, and I would like to. I would like to try and promote that and get and build more of an interest in the industry itself. And that's something that I would definitely be passionate about, and is a space that I am looking at. But yeah, I think if I was to kind of go one way or the other, it would probably be on that side of it.
Yeah, that's interesting. I see a lot specifically in commissioning. It seems like within energy, whether it's oil and gas or other sort of subsectors, it seems like commissioning, there's that effort to build a community of sort of those people. And yeah, even if they're getting together to exchange technical ideas or talk about challenges within the industry, at least you're building that network of other people that are sort of going through the same thing that you are.
Yeah, when it's all said and done, it's actually a really small community on a global level. The amount of people that you bump into on your travels that have gone from project to project or client to client or contractor to contractor. So you do rub shoulders with the same people. That can be a good thing and a bad thing. It's probably an indication that, as I said, there's not a massive amount of injection of new and up and coming people in the industry. So there is definitely a sense of community there, but it's how you leverage that community to try and drum up the interest to grow it out. I suppose is the next challenge.
Have you seen a shift or any difference in maybe 10 years ago to now, where it felt like if you were rubbing elbows with people meant a sense of heavy competition and everything, you're keeping everything very close to the vest, so to speak, and it's more competitive in nature and how you would sort of come across people versus exchanging ideas or just networking in a more sort of free flow sense? Have you seen much of a shift there, or is it still?
I think in the industry, everybody understands that your supervisor one day could be your manager the next day. And as I said, it is a small community, so I don't think there's a level of competition there. I think everybody understands the importance that you will end up bumping into someone that you've previously worked with. So building those relationships, making sure they're positive relationships. It's a good and a bad thing. It's what is it? It's who you know and not what you know. That can be sometimes perceived negatively, that an individual that doesn't have those relationships is not being fairly assessed in a role that they might be more competent in. But at the end of the day, if you get on well with someone in a project, in an environment that's high stress, you're going to work with them better. So it's building that team of people that you can work well with. So that's where people are going to that's where people are going to go to when they're trying to stand up a project. They're like, do I want to go for this person that I've worked with in the past and I know I can rely on them, or do I want to take a risk and try and go for someone I'm not familiar with? So I think that's probably where it's born out of. It's just those trusted relationships where you can rely on someone.
It can work really well, but I think a lot of times you see people leveraging those connections or trusting those connections and just kind of taking a stab at like, yeah, I'll help build the team.
Yeah, no, I think I was definitely given the autonomy to be able to bring the right candidates for trust there, with no overriding, decisions to be like, okay, well, we decided on this person, but we're actually going to go with that person because there's a relationship there. I didn't see too much of it, so it was nice to be given that accountability.
So aside from potential pipeline or anything coming down the road, 5-10 years, where's Ed going to be?
So I'm finishing my MBA at the moment. I my dissertation coming up for the next 6 months in October. I really want to try and not make that a box ticker. I really want to have an interest in the topic. So I'm just taking the next month or so to kind of come up with something that will be of value to me going forward in my career. I haven't settled on it yet, but I think that will help shape the decision making process. I do, as I said, enjoy the interactive element with people, and just seeing what I can do to support someone in their journey as much as possible. So I don't know. I'm kind of it could be a turning point in the career where you can be exposed to more people if you go across I suppose, horizontally in the organization, or then you look to try and move upward. And I think that becomes a very different role than what I'm currently in. So up to now, I don't know, you might have got a sense that I have a pretty aggressive try to have a pretty aggressive career growth. I get itchy after a few years. I wanna go and try something new. But for now, just given the fact that I'm about to come off the back end of probably around 6.5, 7 years of back to back school, I might just want to get into a zone where I'm not doing so much study, and really have a focus on what the plans are going forward. So I know that's a pretty vague answer. It might not be the one you were looking for.
Yeah.
But I feel like 5 to 10 years is an extremely long amount of time to kind of predict. I never thought I would move to Canada. I'm now a Canadian citizen. Didn't think that would ever happen. I never thought I would go to the US. I never thought I would go to Kazakhstan. They've all happened. It's kind of when you have such drastic changes in the course that you initially wanted to do was be an engineer in Ireland. It's kind of difficult to have an idea of committing to something and sticking to it and knowing that that's going to be the plan in 10 years' time.
Yeah. Yeah. Is that somewhere you want to retire back home, or you think you're a transplant for good now?
Have you been to Ireland?
I've not been.
I love Ireland. I love the people. I love the food. I love when the sun is shining. It's just the sun doesn't shine enough.
Yeah.
If the sun was shining a bit more, then within a heartbeat, all my family are back there, and I love going back and I love visiting. But I don't know. I've made a decision to just live in a sunnier climate, and that's what I'm looking for right now. So I'll never say never.
Yeah.
I know it would be great to be closer to family, but yeah, I think I enjoy the climate here.
Yeah, it's tough to beat. Most of my colleagues are from the north of England, and they all have the exact same answer of they just the weather's not good enough to even consider wanting to retire there again. But yeah, I think that's a good place to sort of wind down.
Okay.
Yeah.
Appreciate it, Rob.
I appreciate the time and the insight. Like I say, I knew you had some interesting some stories that you could share, and I appreciate running through your whole journey with me. I really enjoyed hearing the story.
I didn't waffle any bit today. I felt like I was going on.
No, it was good. It was good. My job is to open up the floor and let you talk. People don't want to hear from me, so yeah.
Okay. No, I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to do this.